Hello. So, what you do is like, you got this workflow, right? What I want you to do is like, so first you need to create one GitHub repository, right? Yep, not first Git. Making sense? First, go with like your architect, right? First, you'll create your GitHub account. In that, create something called like, so by default, you'll get the master branch anyway while you are creating that, right? So while creating that, add something called like readme.md. You see that there is this option in the down, right? Says like add that particular readme dot. Click it up, say create one repository, right? Once you create that particular repository, what I want you to do is like, I want you to do something called like create a branch called development branch. No, I mean like let's say, okay, I'll take a diagram if not. Okay, fine, right. So what I want you to do is like, first you are creating one GitHub, right? Under that GitHub, you already have master branch, right? And what I'm telling, while creating this repository, check the admin file, and I mean like readme file, right? Now you have on your repository, you have a master branch. In that master branch, you have a file called readme, right? You can hear it, right? Yeah, fine. So what I'm trying to say is like, once you create this particular branch, I want you to clone this one into your local machines, right? Once you add me, right? That's why I'm telling you. Add readme file. Yes, clone anything. What happens? Is that there is a file you can clone it up, right? That's what I want you to do. Just like clone that thing. Now, I want you to create in your local machine a branch called develop branch. Right? Yeah, development branch. Now, what I want you to do is like in development branch, go with something called like ambient archetype generate. Right? Making sense? I want you to keep that particular things here. Right? So I want in this develop branch source directory form. Format. Why? Because I want you to create a Maven application. Right? Maven. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm not sure whether it will be recorded or not. It's recorded. Fine. So let's say I want you to create Maven a web application in develop branch. Make sure in develop branch I want you to create this particular thing, and by default what you are going to get here, hello world, right? Hello. So this should be there in your development branch. What I want to do is like do some commits, like say added index.html, project finalize, something like 2 bucks. Okay? If not, work fine, anything. Just like make some commit to basically see that commit in the development branch. Then what I want to do in this development branch, I want new features. Right? If you want to create new features, that is what generally they do. You see, from your development branch, you got two new feature branches. From development branch, I am merging out and I am creating two new features. Two branches. Yes. Two branches. Feature one, feature two. So let's say I'm here. I want you to branch out into feature one, feature two. Right? And what I want you to do is like in this feature one branch, keep something called like what we created here. So you have index.jsp here. I want something like content.jsp. And in my feature 2, I want services.jsp. Put some dummy content, anything is fine. Right? And what he's doing, you see, he is at last merging those features back into develop branch. So I want these two features to be merged back into develop branch. once it is done, you see what he's doing? He's going with the release branches, right? So from this particular development branch, now you have two features here, feature 1 and feature 2. Now I want you to create a branch called release branch, and I want you to tag it here. You remember the tagging action? In Git, we did it. Yeah, whenever we do tagging, right, what happens in your GitHub, you'll get some zip file or tar file. Once you do the tagging option, just check it out, right? So I should have a tag in this particular release branch. Now, so what you are going to do, this release branch is going to be merged with your, you see, no, master branch, right? You see. So basically, you got it from to this release branch. From release to you are going with the master branch because that's a production, right? I want you to release this into your master. I don't know what you do. I want you to do that particular, right? So once that is done, what you will do is like come back here again. Imagine that in contact.jsp there is some bug. Okay, let's say the phone number input was 4 nines. It should be 3 nines. Now, generally, when there is something wrong in production, right? When there is something wrong in production, you will not directly go and edit on these branches. What you do is like you create one more branch called hot fixes. If you have something wrong in production, you always do bug fixes in hot fix. Right? So what I want you to do? I want you to create a branch from master saying hotfix. In this hotfix branch, fix contact. Right? Fix contact of JSP. Now where you are going to merge it back again? Master as well as right, because that's a bug there. It needs to be fixed in your development branch as well. Right? And once this is done, once you fix it back to your master, I mean like once everything is done, I mean like once you fix it, it will be merged to your development branch, vice versa release and master as well. Right? And here, so what release you put for the next step? It is release. Let's say for first time it was 1.0. Now put it release like 1.0. Two releases. One release was with a bug, the second release is without bug. Right? Then what you do is like you will get that artifact here, right? The second assignment which we have. I mean like this is still workflow. Right? So understood it? This is how the flow should work. Right? And what was the second thing we talked about in the morning? Maven, right? Okay, so same thing comes here, isn't it? Anyway, so I want you to develop the same thing with the help of Maven projects, right? Then try to update it to Nexus. So I want both, like I told you, right? So I want snapshots, I want releases as well. Making sense? I'm not sure. You should go and figure it out. Right? Because if you are doing, if I want source and form, right? Obviously, I need Maven.
Download Maven, not master branch. Initially,
No, Maven is not your files, right? Maven is an application. It is not going to be version tracked. Only files, these are going to be version tracked. Project. So when you say Onion Architect generate, you are going to get source and form. I want you to version control this. Making sense? I mean like my end goal is nothing but I want you to develop a web application which should be attached to this Git repository which you are working on, and I want this one. Right? Clear? So let's do that, and once it is done, try to move it into Nexus. That is fine, or at least like the next 2-3 days, right? Until it started like this. So if you have any errors or any troubleshooting, we'll go and fix it up. So yesterday we were discussing about volumes, right? Yesterday we were talking about Docker volumes, right? Now let's go and look a little bit into Docker volumes. So yesterday we just created some volume, that's it, right? Yep. Now we'll see like how you can go and work further on volumes, how it can help you up more. Right. So let me go and do the Google. Right, I'm into the specific machine, and yesterday if you remember we created only one specific volume, isn't it? Called the volume which we created was something like data something volume, right? So if you remember, right, if I say docker volume ls, this is the only volume which we created yesterday, isn't it? Right. That was a particular volume which we had yesterday. And what is the advantage of volume actually? To store the persistent data. So whenever we are working with containers, data is always going to be, what you say, like temporary or disposable. So basically I want this data to be available even when my container is gone. That is where we are using the volumes. Now you see, if I keep on creating volumes like this, now if I create 3 volumes here, now will you be able to tell by directly looking this volume ls command, can you tell like which volume belongs to which container? Is it possible like that? No, right? It is a bit confusing because you cannot remember this huge number, isn't it? That is where named volumes comes into the picture. Here you will give names for your volumes, right? Earlier what it happened, whenever I am creating a volume, it is giving some that particular SHA number, some 40-digit hexadecimal, like our commit number. So what I want is, whenever I am creating a specific volume, I want it assigned my own name, specific user defined name. With that you can easily understand like which volume belongs to which particular container, right? And we'll also see, and I told you one more important thing, your containers can share volumes. I told you, right? Let's say you created, that's the reason why I told you, you don't need your container, all you need is the data. So if you destroy one particular container, if you are creating one more container, it can go and work on the same particular volume. I mean like when you are creating a new volume, you can attach the same volume, right? So let's say what I'll do is like, let's say docker container run hyphen name. Let's say I'll give something like a container called third. I'm going to create a container called third, and if I want to specify volume, what I need to do? Docker, okay, hyphen name. Let's say, okay. Now let me start it in interactive mode, right? Then I'll say -v slash anything, right? Basically in that particular root volume, anything you want. Let's say something like my underscore data, right? And bash. So one more thing we are missing is we need to give the image name, right? We need to give the image name. So something like CentOS or Bash. Now if you observe this, this is going to create a volume, right? Under my root directory called my data. Now what I want to do is like, if I do like this, what happens? Huh. And that particular volume will also get some hash numbers, some SHA number again. Isn't it? Making sense? Now if I create this, you see what happens. I'm here. So let me go and log in into another session of this. So I'll go and log in again. And I'll say Docker volume ls. You see I got two things. Now how can I tell which volume belong to which container? If I keep on creating multiple volumes like this, it is going to be very huge headache for me to know which volume belongs to which container. That is where named volumes comes into the picture. Very easy to remember as well, right? Now let's see what happens with the named volumes. Now what I'll do is like, I'll exit this particular container, right? And if I say docker ps, nope, no longer the container is running up. And if I say docker volume ls, I know I got two volumes. Hyphen? Yes. No, that is container name. Right? You see? Where that was command. You see? This is the container name, not the named volumes. Right? I'll show you how you can create the named volumes right now. Right? So let's say I want to create a container called fourth. I want to create a container called fourth. And now, whenever you want to create the named volumes, right, you will simply say the name in front of it. That's it. Now I'll say, what is the name you want to give this volume? Anything. Let's say I'll give my underscore data. This is a volume. I want it to create a volume called my data, and it should point to this directory called my data. Making sense? This my data is going to be created under root directory of nope container. Yes. Yesterday, if you remember, I have given /data. It means it is creating a data directory called, I mean like a directory called data under root. So where it is going to be stored is, you can tell with the help of docker inspect command. Docker inspect volume or docker inspect container, that ID. Then you can go to that volume section. You know that the source destination, it says var lib docker something very huge. This also works the same way, but you can avoid the confusion by giving some name. Do you want to switch off VC? No? Right? So let's say I want to go with that specific thing called my data. Now what happens, you see? So it created the fourth container, and if I go and check my docker volume ls command again, now you know, right? So simply, instead of creating that SHA number, we are giving our user defined names for your volumes. Now you don't need to remember that huge command, right? All you'll say docker inspect volume my underscore data. You see, it is mounted to this. Yesterday it was that huge number that way. Right? That is your not container, that is source, host machine. Your host machine data. You see, now if I say ls, can you see my data here? Because I told this is where it should be created, /my data. Now if I go into cd my data, do I have anything here? No. So where it is attaching to my host machine. That location is this one. So I'll say copy it up. I'll say cd, if not sudo ls, this location. So currently empty because there is no file created over there. Now if I go back to my container and if I create something in my data, let's say touch hello.txt, right? Touch abc.txt. I got two files right here in my data, and if I go back to my host machine again and if I do the same thing, I have two files. Making sense? It is directly attaching. Now the advantage which I get was my volumes is I told these are reusable. Now what I'll do is like I'll say docker container rm -f. I'll remove third one and fourth one. So I removed both the containers. Now if I say docker ps, there is nothing running, and even if I say docker ps -a, no third and fourth, both are gone. But let's say the data which you created called something like hello.txt, abc.txt was very important files. You definitely need them. But where they are stored actually? In the volumes, in your Docker volume. Now if I say Docker volume ls, I still got that my data. Now if I want to create a fifth container and I want this volume to attach, right? We'll simply do the same thing. Let me go back here and I'll say docker container run fifth. Now it automatically uses the my data volume. Making sense? Now if I run this, you see I'm in the new container called fifth container, and if I say ls, I have my data, and if I say ls my data, I have abc and hello. Making sense? Now you don't need to bother about processing because containers are disposable. That is why they are meant to be actually. All you need is data. Processing, you see, within a couple of seconds, your container is up, machine is up. Making sense? Good? Right? Now let's do the same kind of approach with your MySQL. MySQL is important, right? Because all the data generally is going to be stored under your database, something like MySQL. So if you are able to basically do the volume of it, which means you are like at a huge advantage of not basically not what you say depending upon your containers. You simply need to depend upon the data, not this particular container. So what I'll do is like I'll go and create a new container which will use the volume to store MySQL data. Making sense? So let's say I'm creating a database. I want a container, MySQL container, right? But what is the major important thing when you consider a database? The data inside the database, isn't it? You don't need like that processing, nothing. All you need was the data which you stored, the tables you created, the database which you created. That is important. Now what I want to do, I want to create a container for my database and I want to have a backup. Because if I create multiple containers again, I can directly use the same thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? So what I want to do, I want to work with a new container called MySQL. So let's say I'll go to the Docker registry and I want to work with an image called MySQL. Now you'll get a lot of things here, just like Docker volume. Now let's say currently you got these volumes, right? Now I don't want that my data volume. I want to remove that. So Docker, now if I say volume ls, it says you got this container. Now I'll say Docker volume remove rm my underscore data. You see it says it was unable to remove that, right? Why? Because the problem was it's already under use. Why? Because already my fifth container is attached to this volume, isn't it? That's why if a particular container is attached, you cannot delete it. First you need to remove that container, then remove the volume. right? So I'll say docker container rm fifth docker volume remove my data. I was able to delete it. Earlier I was not able to delete because it was already attached to another container called my fifth container, right? If I say docker volume ls right now, only two volumes. So let me go and delete these volumes as well. Docker volume rm start. If it does not work like that. Volumes are separate mount points actually. These are not like your files. This is a file system separately, right? Let's say docker volume rm and the specific thing, right? And if I say docker volume ls, currently you have no volume at all. I cleaned up entire volumes. You need to understand, when you are creating volume, it uses your host machine disk space, because volumes are created on your host machines, right? Important to remember this point. If you don't have enough memory, you cannot create volumes. ls hyphen lh will have that format, right? Will directly get the space because it's a directory at the end of the day. That's it. Similarly, just say ls hyphen lh and that specific file name. You see, it shows like around 20 bytes, 11 kilobytes. మానిటరింగ్ అని ఏముండదు. సో జనరల్గా మీరు ఇప్పుడు లెట్స్ సే పర్టికులర్ ఇది క్రియేట్ చేశారనుకోండి. లెట్స్ సే మీ దగ్గర ఒక 100 మెషిన్స్లో చాలా థౌజండ్స్ ఆఫ్ కంటైనర్స్ రన్ అవుతున్నాయి. ఇప్పుడు మీరు కంటైనర్స్ని మానిటర్ చేయాలంటే క్యూబర్నెటీస్ అని ఉంటుంది, అది డిఫరెంట్ కాన్సెప్ట్ యాక్చువల్గా. బట్ మీరు ఈ మెషిన్స్ని మానిటర్ చేయాలంటే హోస్ట్ మెషిన్స్ని యూ కెన్ యూస్ నాజియోస్. నాజియోస్ యూజ్ చేసి విల్ సీ ద నెక్స్ట్ క్లాస్. నెక్స్ట్ క్లాస్ ఇస్ అబౌట్ నాజియోస్. నాజియోస్ ఏం చేస్తుందంటే ఆ పర్టికులర్ మెషిన్లో ఎంత హార్డ్ డిస్క్ ఉంది, ఎంత ర్యామ్ ఉంది, ఎన్ని ప్రాసెస్ యూటిలైజ్ అవుతున్నాయి, ఆటోమేటిక్గా మొత్తం అది చెప్పేస్తూ ఉంటుంది. ఒక డాష్ బోర్డ్ వచ్చేస్తుంది. ఆ డాష్ బోర్డ్లో మీరు ప్రతి క్లయింట్స్ని యాడ్ చేస్తారు ఏదైతే మానిటర్ చేయాలనుకుంటున్నారు. సో వన్స్ యూ యాడ్ ఇట్ అప్, ఇట్ కీప్స్ ఆన్ ట్రాకింగ్ ఈచ్ అండ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఫర్ ఎవ్రీ 1 minute 2 minutes. It will give you like that information, ఎంత ర్యామ్ ఉంది, ఎంత హార్డ్ డిస్క్ ఉంది. We'll see that in the next class. Right? Now what I want to do is like I want to go and work with the MySQL image, right? If I go into this MySQL image, now we are going into somewhat deep. Now earlier till now we worked only with Ubuntu CentOS containers, but actual purpose of containers is this scenario. You want to run the application, but you don't need an entire operating system to work. That isn't it? That's the purpose of Docker actually, right? ఇప్పుడు మీరు MySQL చేయాలనుకోండి, జనరల్గా what we need? First you need CentOS, then you'll bring that RPM of not CentOS, what you say, MySQL, then you'll install it, then you'll do something like MySQL secure installation, then you'll set up the password, then you'll create database. These steps are required, isn't it? All that can be avoided with the help of this image called MySQL. You see, it's a most widely used RDBMS tool, and you see here how to use this would be coming from this one. You always need to go and do the documentation part. If you are working with any image you take, always go and work with the documentation. Very important. And only the official documentation would be helpful. Everything else garbage. Just left it out. Don't even consider about going into other sites for documentation help. Always prefer the official document only. Right? Now you see what it says. If you want to start the container of MySQL, you see docker run hyphen name something. You see hyphen e. Hyphen e is like an environment variable here. With the help of this hyphen e, you are going to pass some parameters. Now whenever you want to log into your MySQL database, you need password, isn't it? You are setting password with the help of this one. Making sense? Generally, if you want to do that, how you need to do? You first need to log into your MySQL, right? Then you need to do that something called like MySQL underscore secure installation. There are lots of prerequisite steps, right? Installation, starting, enabling that service, lots of things you need to do. That everything can be avoided with the help of environment variable called -e. Now, how many environments you got like that? You see, if you go down, you see environment variables. You can use password, you can create database if you want, you can create user and password, you can go and work with empty password, right? You got like lots of particular things here. And you see where to store the data. That is where volumes comes into the picture, -v. Now let's see, I'll go with the initial thing here. So in the first thing, you see, where is he working with? Yep, this is a particular service, right? Did he use any volume here? Nope, right? But let's say what happens if I run the same command, right? So let me copy it up till MySQL. The tag is nothing but version. So if you don't specify any tag, it will take the latest version. So docker run some MySQL, let's say 1. This is my first MySQL container I am going to run. So I am saying the password I want to set is let's say something like mypass for logging into the database. And I want to use in the, what is -d here? -it -dt, detached mode. It is going to start your particular MySQL in the detached mode. And the image you are using is MySQL. And the name we have given is MySQL 1. Right? Now, once I start it, so it was not able to find it, right? It is going to the Docker registry, it's downloading up because there is no MySQL image as of now with me. Right, so it has run that. Now if I say docker ps, yes, I have MySQL container running. Making sense? And earlier you did not see any ports, but you see you are seeing a port called 3306. Why? Because there's a default port for your MySQL which is running on 3306. Now what I want to do is like, did I create any volume here? But I got volume. So what happens is, the creation of volume always depends upon the type of image you are using. Image, very important. Now how you are going to know how this image was built? Official documentation. And you need to go with something called like Docker file. Docker file is where the information is there how your images are created. Now I'll click on one of the Docker file. Okay. See, this is the Docker file where MySQL has been created from. So it is using Debian. I mean like this is using a predefined image called Debian, which is like Ubuntu kind of operating system. So your MySQL which you are working currently is built on Debian image. And you see it is saying like user add, group add, MySQL, everything. And what it says install. Then if you go down, you see there is a volume. So when you are creating the container for this image, by default it will create a volume regardless you say or not. That's how this image is built. Your MySQL image is built in such a way that whenever you are creating specific container from that image called MySQL, you will 100% get a volume. And is it a named volume or normal volume? Normal volume, right? If I create one more MySQL container, it will create one more volume. regardless I say, I don't say. But I can tell if I want to create a named volume, isn't it? Can I or can I not? What do you think? Can I create a named volume or not? Yes, we can create a named volume, right? How can I do that actually now? Now let's say I already have this volume and I have that container running. So what I'll do is like docker container rm hyphen f some MySQL one, right? I am removing this container docker volume rm. I'll remove this container as well. So I removed both the volume and this particular thing. Now if I say docker volume ls, there is nothing. Now I want to create a volume for MySQL database such that it should, I mean, like let's say I want to create a named volume called my underscore MySQL data. So how should I do that? Yep, you can tell me. So I'll go with the same particular command. Yep, tell me up. Docker run name. Okay, let's say I'll copy till here. You tell me what the changes I need to do. The password I'm using is mypass, and the name I want to use is something like MySQL one. I don't even use some. Now what I need to do, tell me. Okay, you want to create a volume called -v, then okay, let's say MySQL underscore data. Slash, sorry, slash data. Will it work if I do like that? You need to understand. Yeah, please. If I say hyphen data, what happens? Data. Let's say you are telling like hyphen data. I gave hyphen data. No. What happens? Earlier also it ran, right? If I give hyphen d, now also it should run. You are missing something here. So generally, if you are installing MySQL, is it a normal kind of application or it's something special? Something special, right? It's some database. Now, where is your data stored in your database? If you install in something like CentOS or Ubuntu, don't talk about containers at all. So you are normally installing MySQL in CentOS machine. Where is your data is going to be stored? Slash varlib MySQL, isn't it? Where is my Jenkins data stored? Varlib Jenkins. If you take HTTPD document root, where it is there by default? The volumes are created in such a way that they reflect your configurations. So that's the reason why they are going and creating the volume under. So if you want your database to be properly functioning, you should always give this volume. So where is this volume? Actually, this is not host machine. This is for your container which you are running. So when you are creating a MySQL container, the data should be there under varlib MySQL, isn't it? Now if you are creating something like HTTPD container, where is the data going to be stored? Is the document root? Var www.html. That's why you need to always take the help of this file, Docker file. Then only you will be able to identify where to store the data. Now I'll say, whenever I run this container, it should affect my var MySQL. Now, what is the data of MySQL data? Okay, I started this thing, and if I say docker ps, yes, it is running. And if I say docker MySQL data, right? Making sense? Now I want to log into that particular thing. So how we are going to do that? No, I want to go to the database and I want to create something. Because what is the purpose of MySQL container? To store the database, right? To create databases, to create the data. So always, like I told you, first you need to check out this file. You'll get every information here. You scroll down, and if I come down, you see the same thing which we created, isn't it? Some data, and so when you are going and logging, right, you can directly execute the particular command. What is the particular command? If I want to go into that, you already did that. Docker execute -it. Sorry, MySQL. Name of the volume or name of the container? Container, right? So what was the name of the container? MySQL 1, right? Bash. Yes, I am there. Now, how I need to log into my MySQL? Sorry? Yeah, I want to log into MySQL. What is the command you use? For what? MySQL -u root, right? MySQL -u root -p. What is the password I used? My pass. Yep, I am there, right? Now I'll say show databases. Spelling. You see, I got the same thing. Now, how easy was it to create MySQL? How much time it took? Hardly 1 second, right? If you are doing that in the traditional way, you need to remember that RPM file where you need to fetch it from. You need to keep that under a particular this one. Then you need to go and install that RPM. Then you need to update that package. Then install the package. Then start the service. Enable the service. Log into this particular thing. Do set up the password for your root. Everything is skipped, isn't it? In matter of seconds, you were able to spin up your MySQL instance. Right? The same thing which we did in your earlier was very tough, right? So you need to do lots of steps. Here, just one command, isn't it? Just only one command. You are up. Now what I'll do is like I'll say create database. I'll say Ravi. Right? If I say show databases, I have Ravi. Now where is this data is actually getting stored? Where MySQL, where it is connected to? Yet. So basically your data is actually being created on the host machine. So this is just like a link. Right? Now if I say exits and I'll exit from the container as well. Now if I say docker volume ls, I got MySQL data and I'll say docker volume inspect MySQL underscore data. You see, this is where actually the data is getting stored, right? So I'll say copy it up and I'll say ls this one and I'll say sudo. You see, database is getting created. Now what I'll do is like I'll remove this container. I want to create a new container, but what I need actually the database. All it is going to be stored under MySQL underscore data. Right? Now I'll say docker container rm hyphen f MySQL 1. It was done. If I remove volume, I am done. You should never remove the volume. If I remove volume, what happens? The data which I stored was gone. Right? Very important. Now I'll say docker container run. I'll say something called like MySQL 2. Right? And I'm telling use the same volume. Right? I'm telling, but the container is MySQL 2 here. Right? If I say docker, yes, I have MySQL 2 running, and I'll say docker execute -it MySQL 2. Yes, I logged in. Now if I say MySQL -u root -p and my pass, I'm in, and if I say show databases, I have that database intact with me. Right, very important. So this is how your named volumes will help you basically go and define these particular structures. Right, and I told you we got like one more other thing as well. Right? Apart from named volumes, we got one more thing. What is it? Yesterday we talked about it. Mount binds, right? Data binds, right? So basically, with the help of those things, right, what you can do is like I told you, right? You can store the data wherever you want, right? So this would be very interesting actually. So let's quit here. I'll say exit from this one, and I'll exit this from right. Now what I'll do is like now let's go and work with something called like your Nginx web server. If I want Nginx web server, what is my thinking of approach should be actually? Now I want an Nginx web server. What you should think right now? Docker pull Nginx. First, make sure that you search it over there, whether it's there or not. Right? Did I say directly Docker pull MySQL? No, right? First, always make sure it is there or not. Right? So I'll go to this particular thing here, and I'll say, do I have Nginx image or not? Yes, I have Nginx, and it's an official image. Docker? Yes, if it finds in that particular repository, right, it will show it up. Now let's say, I don't think we have anything Docker. Search Nginx. Yeah, you see, it says there are hundreds of all these things. But you see, official build is this one. The same thing which you are seeing it here, 7,300 stars. Right? Now, how you are going to start working with this? Will you straight away start it? Always go for the documentation first. What is this image doing? What is the purpose of this image? How it works? That is very important. And I'll go it. And if I go it down, you see it says, you see, this is how you need to work. Now, how your data mounts will work is basically, you simply give, you see here, am I giving any name here? What I'm giving there? Some path. The only difference is when you are giving a name, it's a named volume. If you give some path, it's a bind mount. Very easy to remember. If you see, if it has some path, full path, if it has some full path, it means it is 100% sure it's a data, I mean like bind mount. If it has a name, it indicates it's a named volume. That's the only way you can differentiate whether it's a mount point or volume. Right? That's why he went and he gave it like that. Right? I'll try to do the same thing. So I'll go and run an Nginx container right now. Right? So what I'll do the same thing. So let's say docker run, and you see where it is pointing to it actually. Why? That is a default document route of Nginx, if you remember. When you did that load balancing concept, if you remember, right, we went with the user share Nginx HTML. Right? So always make sure, that's why always take the help of documentation, because it would be very tough to remember all these commands. Right? You always go with the documentation part. But at least you need to know that thing, the syntax. Why hyphen v is used, why hyphen d is used, why hyphen it is used. That is very important, right? So I'll just copy it up, and what I'll do is like I'll say docker run some Nginx. No, let's say Nginx 1. I'll say Nginx 1. I'll say hyphen v volume. Now, where should I create this? This is very important. Do I have a directory called something like some content? Nope, right? Is there something called like slash some content in my host machine? Nope. Now, let's say I'll create my own particular directory here saying mkdir nginx underscore, sorry, nginx hyphen home. I created it, and what I want to do is like I want to keep some specific file there. So let's say vi index, sorry, nginx underscore home. I'll say index.html, and let's say I'll put up some content saying, hey, I'm keeping some content. Where I'm keeping that content? Nginx hyphen home. Nope. It will be attached to user share Nginx. That's what I'm trying to say. Anything which you are giving after the colon indicates it is going to be affected in your container. The second part. First part is on your host. Second part is on your container. Now what I'll do is like I'll say docker run hyphen hyphen name. Let's say nginx 1 hyphen v volume, and what I want to upload slash home Ravi slash, making sense, and it should update to hyphen d, and the image I want to use is nginx. Right? Making sense till here? So once I create this, you see it was unable to find that, and it is like very lightweight image, just like 20 MB, something like that. So it says it downloaded the latest image, and if I say docker ps, yes, I have nginx. Now I have two containers running, MySQL, nginx. Right? Now you see currently it is running, but where you need to check your particular nginx, so you should get some data, isn't it, if that container is running. Now let's take the IP of that machine. This is IP, right? I'll copy it up. I'll go here, and if I run, nope, I'm not getting anything. Exactly. We missed something called like port. Right? So you need to go and specify the port there. So what I'll do is like while creating this thing, so let me go and stop that container. Docker container rm hyphen f nginx1 and I'll create a new container. Now what I missed was port number, right? So what I can do is like I can simply give something like here itself docker container run, let's say hyphen name, and I want to go with hyphen capital P. That is what indicates port number. Making sense? So it will route the traffic from your container to your host machine. Because where you need to check everything on your host machine, right? Making sense? Confused? So let's say I got my host machine, which is something like Docker for 5 p.m. Now I'm going to run a container called Nginx1. Right? I'm running a container called Nginx1. Now what is the purpose of Nginx actually? What is the purpose of web server? It serves your pages. What's the page I am serving? Index.html. I've said something like, hey, it's Nginx. Now, that should be served via a web browser, right? I mean, like through web server, we serve the pages via client. I mean, like you're using your web server, you see the data. Now, generally, how you see your web browser with the help of IP address. Now, but actually, it is running on port 80 of your container. But if you specify hyphen capital P, it will take one of the open, I mean like you got like 65,000 ports, right? It will take any particular port which is open. It will route the traffic of 80, which is there on container, to the specific port on your host machine. Right? If I run that, now if I say docker ps, sorry, you see where it is routing it to? 80 is on container. Internally, whatever the container you said nginx1, it is running on port number 80, and whatever the port you are saying here 32768 is actually the host port. So any request which you are giving to 32768 would be routed to this container called nginx1. Right? Now what I'll do is like I'll copy this port number called 32768 and I'll say colon. Making sense? Now if I want to do changes, what I need to do? So earlier if I need to do changes, what I need to do? I need to go to user, share, nginx and go change it there. But now you have a mount point where it is automatically attached to your user share nginx HTML. If I want to make changes, right, I don't need to go and bother about all those things. I'll just go to vim nginx home index.html. Do I need to restart, do any other things? No. Everything is dynamic. Was it simple? When compared to the earlier method which we did. So that's how mount points help you. Right? Now how we are going to know that? Now if I say docker volume ls, now you know you don't have any volume. That is very important again. If I say docker volume ls, did I have any new container here? Sorry, new volume. It's a separate mount point. That's what mount points do. How you are going to get that information where it is stored? You'll use what command? Inspect. Now I'll say docker container inspect. What's the container I'm running? And if I go up, if I go to that memory location, you see Making sense? It is easy when you compare it to volumes, right? Very easy to remember, and very easy to make changes as well. Right? Now you can store your MySQL data as well like that, isn't it? Now you can store everything in one particular place over there, and you can tar that particular file, you can store it away. Whenever you want, you can get it back, you can start your containers up. Making sense? Very easy, right? I mean, like, the maintenance becomes very easy for you right now. You don't need to bother about going and doing multiple changes, right? If I want to run another new particular container, what would I do? If I want a load balancing concept, what I can do? I'll simply run the same command saying nginx2, which serves the same request, isn't it? Now you see. Now earlier, if you want to create multiple like multiple web servers, right? How you need to go? You need to go with that virtual hosting. A lot of concept is required, isn't it? Now everything is isolated. Every container acts like a specific VM right now. Right? What I'll do? I'll simply say Docker container run Nginx 2. That's it. I got one more. You see, one more Nginx is up, and it is pointing to. I'll say copy. Yes. Isn't it? Even if my container Nginx 1 is down, I still have Nginx 2. How easy it became actually, isn't it? If you compare with your earlier scenarios, where you need to do load balancing, lots of things. Everything was simply scrapped away with one single command. That's the reason why Docker became huge hit in the market. మన పోర్ట్ కూడా ఇవ్వచ్చు. యా యూ సీ అక్కడ డాక్యుమెంటేషన్ ఇంపార్టెంట్, అందుకే ఇక్కడ చూడండి, మీరు కిందికి వెళ్ళిన తర్వాత యువర్ పోర్ట్ -p. Now let's say I want to start the Nginx 3 on my own specific port, something like 8080 like that. What I'll do, I'll simply go here, I'll say Nginx 3, and I'll say మీరు చెప్పండి ఇప్పుడు 80 ఎక్కడ, యాక్చువల్గా 80 అనేది ఎక్కడ రన్ అవుతుంది? ఆల్వేస్ రిమెంబర్, రైట్ సైడ్ అనేది కంటైనర్లో. ఏదైనా కొలన్ ఇచ్చి రైట్ సైడ్ ఇచ్చారనుకోండి, ఇట్ ఈస్ ఆన్ కంటైనర్. లెఫ్ట్ సైడ్ ఏది ఇచ్చినా ఇట్ బిలాంగ్స్ టు హోస్ట్ మెషిన్. వెనకాల కంటైనర్లో మాత్రం 80 రన్ అవుతుంది 100%. వై? బికాస్ దట్ ఈస్ ద పోర్ట్ విచ్ వాస్ ఎక్స్పోజ్డ్ ఇన్ యువర్ Nginx image. Right? What I'll do? I'll go to this Docker file. If I go to the bottom, you see, right? And if you see this MySQL, they will give it up. That's how your image is built actually. ఇప్పుడు మీరు ఏదైనా ఇమేజ్, లెట్స్ సే మీరు ఏదైనా టామ్ క్యాట్లో వర్క్ చేస్తున్నారు, మీ అప్లికేషన్ అనేది ఏ పోర్ట్ పైన రన్ చేయాలో మీరు కంట్రోల్ చేయొచ్చు ఇక్కడ నుంచి, వైల్ క్రియేటింగ్ ఇమేజెస్. సో విల్ డూ ద సేమ్ థింగ్. సో ఎట్ ద ఎండ్ విల్ క్రియేట్ అవర్ ఓన్ ఇమేజ్ where you should be able to do all this kind of stuff. Right? Now if I go and run this particular command, now I have docker ps. You see, I have 3 Nginx images running. Right? And I can simply go up, copy it up, I'll say colon three Nginx servers. Hardly it took 20 MB. You don't need any processing, you don't need any hard disk, you don't need any extra operating system as well. That is why Docker is mostly used right now in your dev and QA environments, mostly. In production they are like still, what do you say, they are like thinking like whether to go or not, because there are some small, what do you say, problems associated with the Docker production. Right? But for dev and Q environments, you can Go and use it up without any problem. If you want to use it in production, right, that is where Kubernetes is required. Now you currently created how many containers? 4 containers hardly. Some 3 Nginx containers, 1 MySQL container. Now if you have 10,000 containers running, how you are going to manage them? By using Git. Jenkins is tough actually. That's why Kubernetes came. Now if you have 1,000 servers, I told you we are going to use something called like Chef, right, to manage. Similarly, if you want to manage 1,000 containers, which is getting updated, which is getting deleted, which is getting created, which is getting like what you say, new volumes assigned, new mount points assigned, everything is done with the help of Kubernetes. That's completely different actually. You have something called like microservices, right? So you understood the, I mean like data concept, why we are using volumes and these particular things, right? So right, today I'll stop it here, right? So just like practice up, very important data, right? And maybe like we got, I need to go with something called like, so what I'll do is like, we'll do the same particular concepts which we did in your earlier classes. Tomorrow we'll try to implement load balancing concept with the help of containers. If you remember, what should I need if I want to do the load balancing? How many machines I require? At least 3, if you remember from our old classes. Now, do I need 3 machines? No need. Why? I can create 3 containers, right? Instead of 3 particular VMs, I can go and create 3 containers. I need to do the configuration changes. I'll show up tomorrow how easy it is to do all these particular configurations, right? And once that is done, then we'll go and work with something called like Docker Hub as well. Then we'll create our own Docker files. Then we can create our own images. If not, I'll try to show something like WordPress example as well, right? What is required if you are working with WordPress? MySQL, database, both are same, right? Data is required, right? Something like WordPress data. You require WordPress data. Apart from that, you need a web server as well. LAMP stack, right? We'll do the same 3 things and we'll see how to link the containers, right? Everything is individually right now running and I want to club them together. Tomorrow we'll see that particular options, right? Okay, I'll stop it here.